Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Shtottara Shishimad Abhay Charanara Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Shtottara Shishimad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gokopinath Shama Kund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Sri Jagannath Puri Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. Go Premanande Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyam Tato Jaya Mudiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9. The text today is number 8. Shri Paradu Vacha Ramadaya Suragana Munayo Ata Siddhaha Ramadaya Suragana Munayo Siddha Ramadaya Suragana Munayo Siddha Satvai Katana Gatayo Vachasam Prabhahe Satvai Katana Gatayo Vachasam Prabhahi Satvai Katana Gatayo Vachasam Prabhahe Nadaritum Purugunar Adunapi Hipru Nadaritum Purugunar Adunapi Pipru Naraditum Purugunar Adunapi Pipru Kim Toshtum Arhati Sa Me Harir Ugrajate Hai Kim Toshtum Arhati Sa Me Harir Ugrajate Hai Kim Toshtum Arhati Sa Me Harir Ugrajate Shri Paradu Vacha Ramadaya Suraguna Munayota Siddha Satvai Katana Gatayo Vachasam Prabhahe Naraditum Purugunaranunapi Pipru Kim Toshtumar Hati Same Harirugrajate Do this Sri Parada first.
Oh, Sri Paradu Vacha
Shri Praduvacha Ramadaya Suragana Munayota Siddha Sadvai Katana Gatayo Vacha Samprabhai Naraditum Puruganarana Pipipru Kim Toshtamadhati Same Prugrajate. Shri Praduvacha Ramadaya Suragana Munayota Siddha Sadvai Katana Gatayo Vacha Samprabhahe Nadaditum Purugunad Adunapi Pipru Kim Toshtamadhati Same Hari Ugrajate. Shri Praduvacha Ramadaya Suragana Munayota Siddha Sadvai Katana Gatayo Vacha Samprabhai Naraditum Purugunar Adunapi Pipru Kim Toshtumarati Same Harit Ugrajate. Vaishnavis. Shri Praduvacha Ramadaya Suragana Munayota Siddha Sadvai Katana Gatayo Vacha Samprabhai Naraditum Puruganadadanapi Pipru Kim Toshtamahati Same Shri Praduvacha Prahlad Maharaj prayed Brahma Adayaha headed by Lord Brahma Suraganaha the inhabitants of the upper planetary systems Munayaha the great saintly persons Ata as well like the four Kumars and others Siddhaha who have attained perfection or full knowledge Sattva to spiritual existence Ekatanagatayaha who have taken without diversion to any material activities Vachasam of descriptions or words Pravahe by streams not Araditum to satisfy Purugunai although fully qualified Atuna until now Api even Pipruhu were able Kim whether Toshtum to become pleased Arhati is able Saha he the Lord May my Harihi the Supreme Personality of Godhead Ugrajatehe who am born in an Asuric family. Translation. Prahlad Maharaj prayed, how is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of Asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even until now, all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words. Although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness, then what is to be said of me? I am not at all qualified. Would you like to repeat? Prahlad Maharaj prayed, how is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of Asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even until now, all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words. Although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness, then what is to be said of me? I am not at all qualified. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A Vaishnav who is fully qualified to serve the Lord still thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. For example, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, says, Jagai madhai hoite mui se prapishta. Puri shera kita hoite mui se lagishta. Thus he considers himself unqualified, lower than the worms in stool, and more sinful than Jagai and Madai. A pure Vaishnava actually thinks of himself in this way. Similarly, although Prahlad Maharaj was a pure, exalted Vaishnava, he thought himself most unqualified to offer prayers to the Supreme Lord. Mahajano yena gata sapanta. Every pure Vaishnava should think like this. One should not be falsely proud of his Vaishnava qualifications. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is therefore instructed as Trinadapi sunichena chororapi iva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. Om Ajnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Viditam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Nena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Tadati Swapadantikam Deham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvajutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Ladita Shri Vishakam Vitanscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshabhana Videvi Daitaya Kripadaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Jvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Jinatarine Rupanuga Viruddhapa Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishodaya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralamba Rasambode Adambu Jayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sakchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhomestvam Nirdesa Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Shri Jagannatayate Namaha Chakalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gora Tvishe Namaha Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sudato Pangor Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarva Swapadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpa Drumadha Srimad Ratnangada Singhasanastao Srimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtali Sevyamanu Smarami Shriman Rasarasanam Vivam Shivata Tatastitaha Karshan Venu Svanir Gopir Gopinatha Shreyestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Priyayai Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Nrsimha Jai Nrsimha Jai Jai Nrsimha Prahlada Desha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Pringa Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata Abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge manmana bhava madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mami vaishasi yuklaivam atmanam matparayanaha Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam praja aham tam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shutaha shushushro shadadhanasya vasudeva kathaduchi syan mahat sevaya vipra punyatirtha nishevana shrinvatam swakata krishna punya shravana kirtanaha Hridyantakstokya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam Nashta Praeshu Pradeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tada Rajastamo Bhava Kama Lobha Dayaschaye Chaitayate anabhidham stitam satve prasidati evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate vidyate hridaya grantis chijante sarva samshaya shriyante chasya karmani drishta eva atmanishvare. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Shri Paradu Vacha Brahmadaya Suragana Munayota Siddha Sattvaikatana Gatayo Vacha Sambravahe Naraditum Burugana Radhanapi Pipru Kim Toshnamarhati Same Haru Ugrajate. So first, Prahlad Maharaj. This is Prahlad Maharaj offering his prayers, these famous prayers, to Lord Nrsingadev. And Lord Nrsingadev appeared to save Prahlad Maharaj and to prove that he's Bhaktavatsal. And he killed Hiranyakashipu and disemboweled him and hung the intestines over around his neck, and he was roaring ferociously, scaring everyone in the universe, including his wife, who didn't even recognize him. Never seen anything like this. He wasn't sure, is this my husband or not? And the demigods came forward and offered streams of excellent prayers, and they're qualified to do so. They've learned the Sanskrit language, that's their native tongue, Devanagari. And so Prahlad Maharaj was pushed forward by these demigods because the demigods weren't successful. They saw that Lord Nrsingadev wasn't satisfied, even though they had given their best attempt to pacify him. So Srila Prabhupada said it's like pushing a 5-year-old child into the cage of a lion. You can imagine the ferocity of Lord Nrsingadev and the intensity of the situation, and the 5-year-old boy Prahlad, who is guileless. And they pushed him forward into the presence of Lord Nrsingadev, and now he's standing. We have those beautiful pictures of Prahlad Maharaj standing and offering prayers. So he says, Brahmadaya. Brahma Adaya means Brahma and all the other demigods. Surugana Adanapi Pipru means that all these suras, those who are the inhabitants of the upper planetary system. Suraganaha, agana means a group of. So Suraganaha means all the people in the upper planetary systems. Munaya, and the saintly persons. They were all there, like the 4 Kumaras and others. And Siddhas. There's Siddhalok, where the residents have all mystic powers. Comes along with their birth. They're endowed with the ability to fly wherever they want to. And Prahlad says that they're all Sattvaikatana. Sattva ekatana gataya. They're all in the mode of goodness. And vachasam means words or description, like vacha means words. Pravahai, streams of words. So they stood before Lord Nrsingadev and they offered all the beautiful Sanskrit prayers they could muster. Na means na, araditum. So he says, naraditum means still he's not satisfied. Nrsingadev's still angry. And purugana, even though these persons are completely, they have all good qualities. So puru means full, and guna means qualities. They have the best of the qualities. Purugana. Aduna, up till this point, he's not satisfied. Kim toshtum arhati same harir ugajatre. So then he asked the question that what qualification do I have? Kim toshtum. How can I? Toshtum means to satisfy. Arhati same harir ugrajate. So he says ugrajate means a low family. I come from a family of demons. Ugrajate. So I have a low birth, I'm not qualified, so how can I offer prayers and satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead even after everyone else has tried? So this is the humility of the Vaishnav, and Prabhupada points this out in the purport that the Vaishnav, even though fully qualified, thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. And he mentions Kaviraj Goswami, who wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita, saying that I'm lower than Jagai and Madai, and I'm like a worm in stool. What is my qualification? So Prahlad Maharaj, even though he was an exalted Vaishnav and the Lord appeared just for him, he felt like that and said that. And then we come to the jewel of a verse, which is the verse Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave in the Shikshashtakam. Actually, the Shikshashtakam prayers are compiled later. It's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down and wrote these 8 verses, but they are verses attributed to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that are spoken at various times, and they were put together into an ashtakam. And so this third verse, Trinadapi Sunichena, Toror Api Suhishnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. Prabhupada says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore instructed us that one should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. Please meditate on that for a second. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. So this is very practical. Practical means that you can do it. That's what practical means. It comes from the Greek word praktikos, which means to do. And one might think that humility is something that is amorphous or maybe not so practical, especially in the material world. People often say that if I'm too humble, how am I going to get anywhere? But Krishna says, and Lord Chaitanya says, just the opposite. How are you going to get anywhere if you're not humble? In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, starting with the 8th verse, Lord Krishna says, he enumerates 20 qualities which are necessary for acquiring knowledge. And the first one is amanitvam, humility. Amanitvam, adambitvam, pridelessness is the second. In the list of those things necessary to acquire knowledge, to actually understand oneself and know the nature of oneself and the world. And this is a practice. And in the verse, Trinadapi Sunichena, Toror Api Suhishnuna, or Toror Iva Suhishnuna, Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. There are 4 jewels. And Kaviraj Goswami, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita has said that we should string these around our neck like a garland. And if we do that, this is a poetical way of saying that we should be absorbed in this verse all the time. We should meditate on it, and we should practice it. Put it into practice. That means it's practical. So, what are the 4 jewels? The first is that one should feel as low or lower than the straw in the street. The straw in the street is about the lowest thing there is. Other people are stepping on it, and it doesn't protest. And then there's the tree, which is tolerant, and practicing tolerance builds spiritual character. It allows one to see the difference between oneself and one's body when one practices tolerance. You have to be aware of it and think about practicing tolerance. And there are lots of opportunities to practice tolerance, aren't there? Or is it just me? There are lots of things to tolerate. What are some of them that you have to tolerate? Nirkula?
I always find my tolerance tested.
She always feels her tolerance tested when the microphone doesn't come over fast enough.
When I'm traveling in the airport, because there's always things that come up, unexpected things, and that's when
Like what? She doesn't like being waylaid by the government. Nirkula doesn't like the government very much. I've noticed this about her. Right, Nirkula? She doesn't like people going through her stuff and holding her up. Why do you have to look at liquids anyway? Yeah, while traveling, tolerating, that's the point. There's a lot of hurry up and wait situations. Yeah, when else do you have to tolerate?
The element too hot, too cold. The elements too hot and too cold.
Yeah. And in the Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna say about that? What's the solution? Matra sparshas tu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama painu nityas comes to tiksha shvabharata. Tiksha. You have to be tolerant. This is something we can practice all the time because there's always some variance in the weather, unless you live in Hawaii. Then it's a little tough.
then you have to tolerate that.
Then you have to tolerate it being so nice. Yeah, I had some friends that lived there and they were a little disturbed by the fact that 5 years had gone by and they didn't notice it. They lived in Maui and they were disturbed. They said, we got to get out of here. We don't notice the time passing. It's too nice. And that's a fact. It's not very good. But this variance of heat and cold and so forth, it's one Krishna says, you have to tolerate it. You should tolerate this. What else do you have to tolerate? So this is a popular subject matter, I think.
Sometimes when you're driving, it's a tolerate other drivers.
Oh boy, that's a really good one. I don't know why it is, but actually I do to some degree. I've had some realization that while driving, people seem to get more agitated by other drivers than at other times. The reason I was thinking about this, that it's impersonalized. And one gets attached to one's car. Everyone thinks they're their car. They identify with the car. I am my car. And you also can't really see the other person. You just see a big box of metal come in front of you. I know the solution to that, though, how to solve road rage. I can tell you about it in a minute. But you do have to tolerate being on the road because there's all kinds of idiots out there. No, just kidding.
So we have to tolerate the urges of the senses?
The urge of the senses, yes. And in the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction, Vacho vegam manasakroda vegam jiva vegam udarapasta vegam itan vegam yo vishaheta dhira sarvamapi mam prityavim sashishya. This Rupa Goswami puts it as the very first verse of his instructions about bhakti. That first you have to control the senses. All the urges, these are called vegams. Every sense has its own urge. And at the end of this verse he says, one who has practiced controlling all these urges, can be a spiritual master and make disciples all over the world. In other words, he's saying everyone in the world can become his disciple because he's mastered the masters of this world, and the masters are the senses. They're controlling everybody. And someone who doesn't fall for that trick anymore and learns how to control the senses becomes a master. Very important to be able to tolerate the urges. Nice. What else do you have to tolerate? Lots of hands going up.
The mind just does whatever it wants to do. You don't want it to do.
Can you give an example?
Concentrate, like something happens some way, you don't want to think about it, chanting a japa, and then you're flashing in front of your eyes on it. You don't have nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just creates a whole story of the future and stress on it.
I like what you're saying about the story, that there's a story line going on, and oftentimes it runs off into the future, that so many things are going to happen, and don't buy into the story. Yeah, and you have to tolerate that. You have another one? Yeah. And Krishna says, so many places, the mind, in fact, the Yoga Sutra, which is written by Patanjali and quoted often by Prabhupada throughout his books, mentions that the prime goal of yoga is to control the mind. And in the beginning of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the mind can be one's best friend or one's worst enemy. And so he also says in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that even a person of great learning can be swept away by the mind. It's so powerful. Nice.
When we go in sacred time, once in a while, someone will make a rude remark.
Right, and in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna says to Uddhava that the hardest thing to tolerate is harsh words spoken by an ignorant fool. Very difficult to tolerate. In fact, people get in wars over it, gang fights, or just about somebody insulted somebody's mother, and then the next thing you know, there's people want to kill each other. There's so much agitation in the mind. I heard about an incident about 20 years ago where a man was driving his pickup truck, and next to him a motorcycle driver. They got in an altercation on the road rage, and the man driving the pickup truck jerked the wheel and it hit the motorcycle, and he flew off. The man flew off and he died. And the driver of the truck was ordinarily an upright citizen. He had 2 daughters. He had a good job. He was well respected in society and everything like that. But in just a couple of seconds, he ruined his whole life because of that urge, that anger. He just jerked the wheel. He couldn't. He was so feeling that anger urge. And so even an upright citizen, an educated person who knows better, can be swept away by the urges of the mind. Very powerful. Yes.
We have one example from the devotee Puja. She says we have to tolerate our boss.
Tolerate your boss, yeah.
She says senior management at work, especially when they are not tolerant of anyone around them.
Yeah. We find ourselves in all kinds of situations where we have to tolerate the authorities. Yeah. So, yes, another one. Let's get it all out now. Come on.
The harsh words of an ignorant fool or harsh words of a loved one or a ashram
Yeah.
dweller. That's what she is something that's even worse.
That can hurt even more. Yeah. For the Daksha Yajna, Lord Shiva told his wife, don't go to your father's house because he'll insult you, trying to get back at me, and you'll become so distraught. And she was so distraught. She burned herself up. She was so angry.
Sometimes you have to stay in a room with someone who snores.
Yep. Snoring. That's a big one.
And sometimes prashadam is too spicy.
Yeah. kids screaming during class or like running around wild? And where's the parents? Is there any supervision going on here? That can be, and just all kinds of noises. I noticed when we traveled in South India last year, everywhere we went and we'd set up for a class and we'd start a program and then the noise would start. Some machine somewhere, some kind of agitation was going on. So toleration, there's plenty of opportunity for toleration. This means we can be practicing all the time. And so this is one of the foundational points for advancing in spiritual life, practicing this tolerance. And so no one can say they don't get opportunity to practice. We have opportunity to practice spiritual life 24 hours a day. Because just in the act of practicing toleration, one makes advancement. Yes?
When something happens and you just walk away because it's disturbing you, is that tolerance?
It depends. If you have a duty to do, you can't walk away. You have to stay there. Just like I was talking about the noise in classes. After a while, I resigned myself to the fact that India was the noisiest place on earth. And that everywhere I went, there was just going to be the noise, so I just tolerated it. And Prabhupada talks about, so if you have a duty to do, you can't just get up and walk away. That's not necessarily tolerance. You have to continue doing your duty. That's why Krishna mentions this heat and cold. Prabhupada in the purport says, if it's very, very hot, you still have to go in the kitchen and cook the offering. And if it's a freezing cold, you still have to take your bath. You can't say, I'm not taking a bath today. This means tolerance. It means you go on doing your duty despite the fact that there are disturbances in the environment. Yes?
Can I say another?
Yeah.
We have to tolerate the reactions of karma.
We have to tolerate the reactions of karma. I just repeated it for him. So, this is a good point. And Brahma makes this in his famous prayer where he says, Tate anukampam susumikshimano bhunjana eva makritam vipakam pradvagva purvir vidadam namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. So he says that one who tolerates all of the reactions that come to him or her, all the while with body, mind, and words glorifying the Lord, becomes eligible to go back to Godhead. That's how powerful this tolerance is. That if you tolerate the sinful reactions that are coming to you, and what implicit in that verse, Brahma says, is that you consider that I caused these myself. They're coming to me because of my own sinful activities. So listen to the verse. Tate anukampam susumikshimano bhunjana eva makritam vipakam. Vipakam, what does that sound like? Anything you've heard in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam? 5th canto? Vipakam. You ever heard of Kumbhipaka? You know Kumbhipaka? Kumbhipaka is a hell where people are cooked alive. They're cooked alive in a big pot. It's a sinful reaction for killing other living entities alive. When people boil crabs and lobsters and all kinds of animals like that. And Kumbhipaka means people get boiled alive. So this verse has this word, it says, Te anukampam susumikshimano punjana eva atma kritam vipakam. What the verse is saying is that I'm stewing in my own juice, basically. In other words, whatever sinful reactions are coming, I caused myself. There's a saying in English that you made your bed, now you have to lie in it. So the devotee considers that I did this to myself. Whatever sinful reactions are coming, those are created by me, not by anybody else. So then the third jewel in this verse is that one must give respect to others. One must be tolerant like a tree, and be free from all sense of false prestige. In the 15th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama tvanvarva mukta sukha dukkha sanjaya gacchantya muda paramabhyayam tat. That in order to get free from the illusion of the material world, the first thing Krishna says, nirman, you must become free from false prestige. That we come into the world for a short amount of time, and the first thing our parents do is to slap a name tag on us. Say, this is your new identity. Your new name is Schnicky. Here you go, Schnicky. Here's your name tag. And that's who you are now. And then, because of one's karmic situation, one identifies with a certain family and job and status and so forth. And these this is a sense of false prestige. And Prabhupada used to quote, even a pauper becomes proud of his penny. So one has to become free from false prestige. And then finally, one must be ready to give all respects to others. Dronacharya had tested both Arjun and Duryodhana. So first, Dronacharya, the teacher, asked Duryodhana to go out and find somebody better than himself. And he looked all over the world, and he came back and he said, I can't find anybody. And then he told, it was Yudhishthira. He told Yudhishthira, now you go out and you find someone that's lower than yourself. And he went out and looked all over the world, and he came back and he said, I can't find anybody lower than me. So, Amanina Manadina, there's a way in which our perspective is determines our ability to see those lower or higher than ourselves. So these 4 items are practical. These are the foundation of spiritual life, and they're jewels. They're precious jewels for advancement in spiritual life. Now, the jewels are available. They're right there in the verse, and the author says you should string them on a garland and then wear them around your neck. So that's practical, because that's like home handicraft. You can string it home. So this is homework, home handicraft work. You have to go to the yarn barn or whatever you have here. You have some handicraft store, and go get yourself some string, and then you take these 4 jewels home and you put them on the string. You make a garland out of them. This is the recommendation of the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then you wear them around your neck. So let's discuss what it means to wear these 4 jewels around your neck. This verse, Trinadapi Sunichena. Yes. What happened in the microphone? Okay, so to live by it and make it your guideline. Nice. Let's unpack that a little bit. Really nice suggestions. To live by these 4 tenets, these 4 principles, and to make them your guideline. Can somebody say more about that? How to live by them? How would you do that? Yes.
You can use them as a reference point.
Okay.
Use them as a reference point.
Be more specific. Give an example of what might happen to you in a common everyday occurrence where you would use these as a reference point.
Tolerating, eating cold, tolerating.
Like in your everyday life. What might happen to you today where you'd have to use these as a reference point? Reference point means you refer to them, you look at them, you go back and you check in on them. Okay. She has another suggestion.
Like for me, I would feel like when I go on books,
Yeah.
And there's so many types of people, and sometimes they are very rude. I try like to give them equal respect to the one who's living on the street and the one who's properly dressed. Because sometimes I think that plays in my mind. So I try to remember that this is how I have to act.
So, different kinds of people you meet on the street. Some of them are, you said, crooked?
Like living on the street.
Oh, some of them are living on the street, but you tolerate the mind's impulse to discriminate between them, and you see them equally. That's a kind of tolerance.
To be polite to either them and the person that's normal, and to present the book to them, to not thinking that, well, it's not fluent and it cannot know this or read this type of book. So I try to just give respect to everybody.
There was a homeless man in Santa Cruz who bought a whole set of Bhagavatams. He was getting a government check, and he didn't have a place to put them, so he kept them in a locker. But he was reading them. He'd be in the park reading them and everything. The Kurnas sold him a full set. It can happen. Okay.
Using them as a reference point
Yeah.
would mean that 2 points. Like one is that your basic instinct might be to, like we may not naturally have humility, we may not naturally have tolerance and stuff. The basic instinct might be to punch the person who's bothering you. But instead of doing that, trying to remember, like going by my analysis at that point and saying, I can't be tolerated. So, for example, just picking a book's example, instead of punching someone down, you just tolerated it, acted the way you would do anything happen. So just not going by the basic instinct. And the other thing could, yeah, I think that's it.
It's interesting that it's around your neck, right? I mean, if you're going to really want to remember something, like someone told you to bring you some apples from the store or something like that, and you're afraid you might forget, so you maybe, put your car keys somewhere where you can, see that they're in an abnormal place. If you wear something around your neck, it's reminding you all the time to keep going back to it. Someone else had a hand up. Yes.
So to use them as a guideline, it's like to say that these are the 2 lines, and if you go outside them, it's not very good.
Can you give an example how you might stay within the guidelines? What would it look like in your daily life? What was the scenario you'd have to tolerate, and how you'd use those as a guideline? Okay. Yes. Sugiyoti first.
I think that honesty is really important.
Honesty. Why?
To be honest with oneself, so to realize or recognize here I'm becoming proud, or here, even though this person has acted in a way that I don't appreciate, I actually also did something wrong to agitate and cause them to act or respond in such a way. So once we become honest with ourselves, we can start and I think I'm becoming more humble. If I recognize that I'm proud in a certain situation, then I can try and become more humble. Ask forgiveness if I did something wrong.
So when you admit it, when you become conscious of it, the conscious awareness helps you refer to these practices all the time, because you can actually pull them out and use them, rather than just pretending you don't have a problem, right?
We should remember the higher goal, that it says that Kirtan is the higher. That's the higher goal, and we should tolerate, be humble, give respect, and should not expect with respect. So by doing these things, the higher goal is that we'll be able to channel him constantly.
Oh, that's a nice point. Really nice point, that we have to keep the goal in mind. In other words, if someone is simply trying to adjust their situation in the material world in order to be comfortable and happy, it's very difficult to tolerate. But if we accept all kinds of inconveniences because we know that it will lead to the fruit of realization, and that's what we're after, then it's much easier to tolerate, isn't it? And just this discussion we're having, it brings it to a conscious awareness that there's a fruit that comes from toleration, a fruit of self-realization, and that the ability to actually continually chant God's names comes from that. Yeah.
I kind of find the analogy of the necklace interesting. Like, they're kind of almost like an opulence. Like, when somebody's tolerant of patient, like, I see it, it's beautiful. Like, I really appreciate it, and it's attractive. Like, and also, like, the idea, like, there's like some like idea like I have around some of these things, like we're trying to be humble, so you like try to hide these somehow, right? It's like a way to show humbleness, or so I guess like the jewels being on your neck is like something that you know that people can see obviously for everybody to appreciate. And then also I guess like they're also something that you can lose. Like a necklace is something that can be stolen. You can lose it if you don't take care of it and stuff like that.
Nice. I really like your first point about how these jewels are an opulence, just like people wear valuable jewels around their neck. And in fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila Dev says, Titikshava Kurunika Surida Saravadehinam Ajatra Shatrava Santa Sarava Sarubhushanaha. Sarubhushana means these are the jewels, or the ornaments of a sadhu. It means a spiritually advanced person. What are they? The first one is titikshava, their ability to tolerate. You can fake humility, but you can't fake tolerance. It'll catch up to you sooner or later. So titikshava karunika surida sarvadehinam. So these are listed. First one, tolerance, titikshava karunika, and mercy. A person has compassion because they have room in their heart to give mercy to others. They're not simply concerned with their own well-being. Surida sarvadehinam. Ajatra shatrava santa. They don't have an enemy. And sometimes people say, well, Vaishnavas seem to have enemies, but the point is that a Vaishnav doesn't become his enemy's enemy. If someone becomes the enemy of the Vaishnav, he doesn't think, okay, then I'll get him back. I'll be his enemy. He remains neutral. Of course, he may have to engage in a duty like Arjuna did. He had to fight his enemies. At first he said, as false renunciation, I'm not going to fight them. It doesn't seem like a good idea. But when he found out that it was his duty and that Krishna wanted him to fight, he did it anyway. But with a sense of neutrality. So these are the most beautiful ornaments. Even if someone doesn't have the trappings of a wealthy, opulent person, if they have these ornaments of tolerance, one can see that they're advanced. And it's very beautiful, someone who has this ability to tolerate. Nice point. You can actually see that garland around, those jewels around the neck of an advanced person. Tolerance, and this feeling that one's... Just the other day we heard a presentation by Ambarish Prabhu when we were at the FOI. He was talking about building this Adbhuta Mandir, this wondrous temple that Prabhupada had asked for many times in Mayapur. He kind of mentioned that he put in $23 million of his own money. Well, that wasn't very, wasn't. I couldn't do very much for the project, but everyone after the talk was very impressed with his humility. I remember when he was living in Detroit, and my friend Divyanga told me that, Ambarish drives an Escort, which is just the crummiest little car that Ford makes. He was kind of impressed with that. Anyway, these are ornaments of Vaishnav's humility, pridelessness, tolerance, and so forth. Yes?
Just one point I wanted to add to, which may also help to make it more practical, is how, I mean, these are big terms like humility, and it has deeper meaning. So what may also help, at least for me, is to make it very simple, like very practical. Have what's a simple definition? And I think for me, what Prabhupada said once, I think the definition of humility is not to think low of yourself, but to think less of yourself. So I thought that's very easy way to remember how to be humble.
It's not low self-esteem. That sometimes people have low self-esteem and they become depressed because and unmotivated. But real humility means that one sees oneself in relationship to Krishna and sees that I'm actually a servant. And also, it's not that a person who's humble simply tolerates everything that people perpetrate upon one, because we see that one must do one's duty. This is humility. Hanuman did his duty for Ramchandra, and in the process he destroyed Lanka, and he didn't tolerate the insults of Ravana and so forth. He stood up to him. But that was on behalf of Ram, not on behalf of himself. So humility is a dynamic concept. It's not simply low self-esteem. Yes? Well, there are some people who develop these techniques for the sake of their own material advancement, like Hiranyakashipu. He exhibited tolerance when he performed austerities, so much so that he stood on his tiptoes and held his hands up in the air for thousands of years until ants had eaten his whole body, and the soul was just taking shelter within the bones and so forth. But his whole idea was demoniac. It was to get some power so he could dominate everybody. So that's not real humility. But on the other hand, somebody who's doing their service for Krishna and they tolerate because they have to do their duty, as we mentioned before, because it's connected to Krishna, that's real tolerance. The motive is everything. Is that what you meant? Okay.
What is often we think of ourselves as a servant rather than being a certain kind of servant, like wanting preference over one service or the other, even though they're both important.
Well, it's not necessarily bad to have a preference, one service over another. In fact, it's natural. Some people develop a desire to do one particular kind of service or another. But in the process, we should be useful, and we should serve under the direction of an authority so that we can help the entire group and the whole project. But even in the Nectar Devotion, it's mentioned that it's a spiritual emotion to want to perform a particular kind of service for Krishna and to pray for it and to hanker for a specific kind of service. Everyone's unique individual, and we all have desires for certain kinds of service. But it doesn't, humility means that if you're given another kind of service that's come down to you, that you would accept that and not simply say, I can't do that, I can only do this kind of service. One would pray for Krishna's mercy to be engaged in a certain kind of mercy and take it as it descends. Okay? All right. Do you have another point?
I have a question.
Okay.
So humility and tolerance, they both go together. That if you are humble, then if you tolerate, then that will make you more humble. Or if you're humble, then you tolerate. So they both go together, or
They go together.
they go together.
Yeah. Because you have to tolerate the false ego. Oftentimes, as we mentioned before, that's one of the things that comes up is one feels oneself to be superior to others, and at some point we may have to tolerate when we're in a subordinate position. They're all related. Yes?
I really like the idea of tying all these qualities into Krishna. I mean, I only understand intellectually, but I like the idea. Like I've noticed before, like in myself and in other people, that like sometimes like I can be patient, but then I look down on other people because they're not patient, or because I've learned to become more humble. And like I compare that to other people. They're not trying to do it, or they're not as humble. So like it's like a constant battle in my mind.
Well, one thing is that humility is not an intellectual exercise ultimately. It's not on the mental plane where I decide that now I'm going to be humble. Although we're talking in terms of practicing humility, and we do that because that will bring a conscious awareness to my current state. But in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami explains how along with spiritual advancement comes an equal part of dainya, or complete humility, utter humility. So when one actually has spiritual realization, there's a way in which one will see oneself as and feel oneself to be very humble. If you read, do we have the Vaishnava songbook available real quick? Ha ha ha. If you could look up Amara Jivana, please. It's very tasty. Actually, we have the whole Sharanagati and Gitavali in one book. And I had one copy, and at our home programs many years ago, we were reading those. And the devotees were so attracted to them, they said, we'd all like to have a copy of that. When I called Dasara Sutta to ask him if I could get copies, it said, it's out of print, you'll have to reprint it. And the devotees were so enthusiastic, they put in their own money just to reprint the edition so they could have it and make it available. And again, your point was about
relating them all to Krishna, yes?
Yeah, and my point was that it's not a mental construct, humility, but it's actually something that naturally comes out of the soul on the spiritual platform. This is mentioned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami when he lists, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lists the 9 symptoms of bhava, which is a very advanced state of bhakti. And that is that a person, although becoming even more and more qualified, thinks himself or herself less and less qualified and feels very humble and meek. And it springs from the spiritual platform, not from the mind. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in this song called My Life from Sharanagati, says, "My life is always engaged in sinful activities. Without a trace of pious activities, I am always inclined to give great anxiety and trouble to other living entities. For my personal sense gratification, I never reject any kind of sinful activity. I am not at all merciful, and I see only to my personal interest. When others are suffering, I become very happy. I am always speaking lies, and if someone is suffering, that is very pleasant to me. I have lots of material desires within my heart, and I am always angry and deceitful. I am captivated by subject matters of sense gratification, and am almost crazy. My ornaments are malice and false pride. I am conquered by sleep and laziness, and am always averse to pious activities. But I am enthusiastic to perform impious activities. I always cheat others for my prestige. I am conquered by greed, and I am always lusty. I am so fallen, I have no association with devotees, and I am always an offender. In my life there is not a bit of auspicious activity, and my mind is always attracted by something mischievous. Therefore, at the fag end of my life, I have become almost an invalid because of all such suffering. Now in my old age, with no alternative, I have by force become very humble and meek." Thus Bhaktivinoda offers this sad statement of his life's activities at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So, in order to attain degrees of true humility and the ability to give respect to others, one has to have one's foundation somewhere else besides in the material world. The material world and the platform of the mind doesn't sustain these qualities of humility very long. As mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvar gunas tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoretena sati dhavato bihi. The verse says that when one is becoming a devotee and surrendering to Krishna, then a person develops all the good qualities. Naturally they come out. They're there within the soul and they begin to shine forth. And so much so that even the demigods, the suras, want to live with such a person. They seek his company. And on the other hand, harava bhaktasya, if one doesn't have bhakti, kuto mahadguna, where is the good quality? Manoretenasati dhavato bihi. The author says that those qualities are only on a mental construct. They're running on the chariot of the mind, and they'll come and go. However, if one actually has what's called spiritual integrity, it means that, as someone brought up, truthfulness. If I have real truthfulness, that means I'm true to my practice and to my surrender, and I'm sincere. I'm actually giving up my stake in the material world, and I'm surrendering to Krishna, and I'm honestly following the process to the best of my ability. Then I develop a kind of spiritual integrity, and there's a reciprocation from Krishna within the heart that is my main support in life. In other words, I'm not taking my support and my food from getting respect from others. It's no longer attractive. I'm pleasing Krishna by my own internal surrender. And because there's actual reciprocation from Krishna within the heart, that's my preoccupation, is surrendering more and more to Krishna. I care what he thinks, and I care what the spiritual master thinks, rather than how I appear to the outside world. That's why humility is actually possible, because I have another refuge, another place to take shelter. And so when I'm engaged in that actual surrender process, then the good qualities naturally come out. The Bhagavatam says, Bhakti parishanu bhavo viraktir anyatra trisha trika eka kala. Prapadya manasya tasnata tushti pushti shuddhapayunugasam, which means that when a hungry person is eating, he or she gets nourishment, satisfaction, and eradication of hunger simultaneously and automatically. And when somebody's actually surrendering to Krishna, they filled out that little form. You know that little form they pass around? It's a little form. It says, I surrender. And there's a little box you can check. You put your name by it and say, okay, I surrender. I'm opting out of the material world. And you fill it out. And you put your little check next to the box, say, okay, I surrender. And then you hand it in. There's a little table you hand it in at. And say, here's my form. I'm officially surrendering. I give up. So when you're officially surrendering and you give up, then prapadya manasya yatasandatastus means that there's you get bhakti. The natural affection for Krishna grows because you have nowhere else to go. Now you're not taking your nourishment from the material world. It's all coming from Krishna. Anubhava means Krishna will reveal himself directly to you. And then virakti, anyatracha, means you become detached from all other kinds of things not related to Krishna, including false prestige, because it's false, it's not related to Krishna, and false humility, and all one's vested interest in the material world. It's no longer necessary because you have the real thing. Otherwise, it's always necessary because we're not dead stones. We have to have something. And if we don't have Krishna, then by default, we have to have the material sense gratification, which includes false prestige and so forth. Yes?
Mike.
The harder it gets. Because in the beginning you think, okay, we come here with Krishna and we become purified and we live like we want it. But the longer I've been here, it seems like the farther the goal is, because the purification comes from Krishna, but it doesn't come so quickly. And so we know that we're supposed to be humble and tolerant and all of that. And we think we can do it. But then life hits us and we realize I'm not so humble, I can only do that, I have to fight. And Krishna constantly sends defensive tests and obstacles for us to overcome and become stronger Krishna consciousness. But sometimes it seems you don't become purified quick enough to be able to handle the temptations and the material because it takes for Krishna consciousness to develop. So it's kind of a catch. You have to stay here to become purified, but you're not purified, so it's difficult to stay because you don't have, you know what I'm saying?
Sure, it's all difficult. Prabhupada said that those kinds of, what's that?
Just kind of rephrase the question.
That it's as she's going on in devotional service, in the beginning it seemed like it should be you could taken care of in one fell swoop. We we'll take this and become purified and go back to Godhead. But as she goes on in the process, she's seeing that she's feeling that it's taking a lot longer than she thought, and sometimes the kinds of tools that she needs aren't there fast enough to deal with the bigger trials that are coming along. Something like that. They're not keeping pace. The qualities that she wants to have to deal with the bigger and bigger tests that she seems to be getting don't seem to be there. Therefore, it seems more and more difficult. Is that somewhat accurate? So, a couple of quick points. One is that those battles that are most difficult are most valuable. And things that are learned very easily are forgotten very easily. Nanda Prabhu told us that Prabhupada taught him that. He said, anything that's learned very easily, you also forget very easily. but something that takes a long time to learn and is very difficult to learn, but you learn it, you don't forget it. And there is an interim point in devotional service that's mentioned by Krishna personally in the Bhagavatam that describes the situation that you're talking about. And I don't know if I can remember the whole verse, but it starts, if someone has a Vedabase, they can look it up really quick. Jata Shradho Makkatasu Nirvina Sarvakarmasu. It says that, Krishna says, that one's faith has awakened. Jata Shradho Makkatasu Nirvina Sarvakarmasu. And one's disgusted with all kinds of material activities. And one also knows the results of engaging in fruitive activity and doesn't want it. But one doesn't have the strength to not always resist those things. It hasn't developed the full strength yet. So that Krishna recognized that. So yeah, that's a situation in devotional service. You know all about it. You know what you want. You know what the goal is. You know what you don't want, but you can't do it yet. And so Krishna recognizes it out in the open. He says, okay, continue on with your devotional service, be happy in serving me, and at the same time feel some repentance in your heart that you can't quite do that yet. And that repentance will help to burn up the whatever reactions are still holding you back from performing the devotional service. And it is true that the more advancement we make, the more we may see obstacles, more and more subtle obstacles that seem more difficult. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exemplified this by cleaning the Gundicha Mandir. In the beginning, there were large pieces of straw and dirt that could be easily seen and taken out. And then he cleaned it again, and the pieces got smaller. And then there's a way in which they were taking out really fine pieces of dust. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments on that process, saying that as one continues in devotional service, there are many subtle obstacles that arise, and one has to deal with those also. And that may take some time. But Krishna is always helping. He knows what the obstacles are, and the other thing is we should depend on Him. It's not Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, killed all the demons in Vraj. And similarly, whatever obstacles in the way of anarthas are there within our heart, we should also call Krishna to come and destroy those demons. We should depend on Him. So that comes to the power of prayer, which is another practical way to advance in devotional service, and we're going to talk about that in the next few days. That's practical, because if you feel you're in the situation where you can't quite muster the strength to deal with certain kinds of tests, you have to pray. It's very practical. And when you pray, Krishna will come and help you. Okay, maybe one more, or yeah.
Just on the same point as Sukranti brought up, as I was hearing what she was saying that as I have these struggles and as I go on in my practice, I find that it's difficult for me to, that's what I was hearing. I was hearing a lot of like, I am me, and I was reflecting on it. I was thinking that we do individually endeavor, but at the same time, devotional service isn't done by just one person. It's done by a community of people, and in a community of people. So I want to if you will please, speak to the necessity of becoming our brother or our sister's keeper as a community, and how can we strengthen the communities that when we have these difficult times, which can be transition times, that we don't have to just be alone. We can just practically ask someone for help. It's another practical thing to do. Ask someone for help.
Excellent point. Rupa Goswami gives us the advice that we should develop the loving exchanges between the devotees before he even talks about chanting the holy name in the Nectar of Instruction. where he says, Dadati pratigunati guyamakyati prachiti bhunte bojayate chaiva sadvinam pratilakshanam. That there are 6 exchanges of love between one devotee and another: giving gifts, accepting gifts, giving prasad, accepting prasad, revealing one's mind and hearing from others how they reveal their minds. Who would have thought that this is an important stage in advancing in spiritual life? But Rupa Goswami lists it among the most important points. And this Guyamakyati Prichiti, being open to hearing from other devotees and also revealing one's mind to the devotees, is very important. We have to have like-minded advanced devotees who we can go to and talk about how we're feeling, what trials we're coming up against, and take their advice, and also have a place to vent and feel like we're supported. And it's very important. One who has that can overcome the various obstacles that arise in his or her practice of devotional service. Personally, I have friends that I always take shelter of on a regular basis, maybe even every day. And also near Kulin, I take time to talk about things like if you're in a family situation where you're grahastha, and if you have an open devotional relationship with your spouse, and you can sit down and talk about things and really deal with them in an open way, then you can overcome the obstacles. One of the difficulties of obstacles is keeping them hidden. As long as they're hidden and they don't come to the light of consciousness, then you can't deal with them. And oftentimes that's due to false ego, that I don't want to bring it out, because then maybe someone will think less of me. That's a kind of cheating or insincerity, that I don't want to show where I'm really at, because then everyone will know I'm not a pure devotee or something like that. But if you do take the time to bring them out, first of all, people appreciate it. They think, wow, what a nice advanced pure devotee to be able to bring out such anomalies. And then they also will help you. And just the process of bringing them out and exposing them to other sincere Vaishnavas helps. And you'll find that others have been through similar things, and they'll help you to deal with the situation. So in a society of devotees who are all endeavoring to go back to Godhead, this kind of exchange is vital. And we find sometimes when people isolate themselves, they don't have a friend in Krishna consciousness, or they won't open themselves up, they oftentimes go to find that type of solace somewhere else, and they go outside the association of devotees, or they just give up in the process. So we should emphasize that, and we should look for ways in which we can assist other devotees, and by openly discussing with them and seeing how we can help, and listening to their whatever is in their heart, so that they can reveal it to us and be helpful on all levels, on the family level, and then in the temple and so forth. That's what makes a temple strong. A community becomes strong when there are strong relationships among the devotees, because there will always be ups and downs, but that's how we all hold together, and that's how we can make advance. That's very practical. So today we've heard about the jewels that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has offered us, and the suggestion by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that we take a handicraft assignment. We have to go home, get some string from the yarn barn, and we take those jewels and we string them up, and then you have to wear them around your neck, just like you wear beads or a necklace around your neck. Wear those jewels around your neck, and then keep them as your reference point. And they're feeling oneself to be lowly, understanding that I'm an insignificant servant of the servant of the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being tolerant, and then no one can say they don't have opportunities to tolerate. And if you take that opportunity to tolerate, you become stronger and stronger in devotional service. The strength of your tolerance grows, and then you become equipoised, and you can overcome the mind. And then more tolerant of the tree, and then free of false prestige by taking shelter of Krishna and trying to please Krishna rather than everybody else. And then finally, giving respect to all others. This is very valuable, to try to find the good in others and show respect to them. And also, as it's said, that it's amazing how much you can get done when you don't care who gets the credit. That's practical. You can practice that in your daily life and notice how the false ego always wants to take credit. I'll do it, but I want my name on it. And if I don't get credit for it, then I'd rather the project was scuttled than I don't want it to succeed unless I'm the one who makes it succeed. If you have that feeling, then you have a good opportunity to work on yourself with this idea of giving respect to others and not taking it for yourself. Om Tat Sat. Thank you very much. Here on a Wednesday morning in Toronto, Ontario, we've now come to the end of our Srimad Bhagavatam class, and I'm so happy that everyone came today, especially because it's a Wednesday. Hare Krishna. Any last points or announcements?
Yes, Prabhu. So thank you so much, Big Hari Bol, for a wonderful class by Prabhu. Devotees at ISV. So they were watching and listening.
Hare Krishna.
And which is it's considered already. That's the base for Mother Virakula. So big thank you to them. And at the same time, I guess apologies to all the devotees who are watching the broadcast as well because of the not so good quality of the streaming that the medium that we are using. But we are praying that by everybody's blessing, we can hopefully improve the quality and the presentation as we start to explore this online media and how we can present this broadcast this information. So again, apologies to all the devotees online, but thank you for being there.
Thanks for tolerating.
I didn't mention, but that was one of the comments that we had.
They're tolerating the bad connection.
Very quickly, so this was day 2. We have 3 more days to go, so we're very happy. The Bhagavatam classes will continue, so devotees please continue to come in the morning. And the plan for today, we'll continue with the daily readings, but we'll move the time a little bit. So we moved it to 5:15 in the evenings. That would help, we hope, with the scheduling better. So we'll request Prabhu, we'll continue to read Srimad Bhagavatam from 5:15, that's Toronto Eastern Time.
For 1 hour, 5:15 to 1.
6:15.
So 6:15. And that would, and then we'll go into, we'll take a short break, about 15-20 minutes. And we'll have a Sankirtan training. We're calling it an advanced Sankirtan training workshop, which is a great opportunity for all the devotees, for everyone, but especially those who have been going out and distributing books and had a chance. And this is a great opportunity as a refresher to hear from Vaisheshika Prabhu and all the tricks and all the.
It's guaranteed. Guaranteed to double your book distribution. Or your money back.
It's a great opportunity. Please, all the devotees try to make it 6:30 sharp. We should start. And again, all the techniques, how to improve and advance in your presentation on the street while distributing books. So, thank you. And last but not the least, as most of us know, today is a very special day. Because it's a very special day. We have a very special devotee with us. That's Mother devotees, she chose to be with us and share this day with us. So Mr. Subha by loudly chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,